Welcome Heights Lower School Cavaliers to Fishing for Curriculum Alive with Mr. Love. I'll be your host this week as we check out Maryland waters. You can see here we're on Back Creek in the Severn River. The Chesapeake Bay is one of the most amazing fisheries on the East Coast. It's one of the largest estuaries in the world. An estuary is an area where salt and freshwater meet together. There are dense expanses of shoreline, and Maryland is home not only to blue crabs but to the rockfish, to perch, to all kinds of varieties of fish. And as you go closer to the ocean, you get into tuna and huge ocean fish. But as you come up into the tributaries, you have brackish fish like perch and rockfish. And then as you go further out into these rivers, you can get up into freshwater fish and trout. So we're going to try to take a look at how to get started this summer while you have time in fishing. So I want you to take some time to get some gear together. We're going to talk about tackling gear first. Okay, you're going to need a rod and a reel. Maybe you already have one, maybe you need to buy one. There's a lot of different kinds, we can talk about them. You're going to need some rigs or some lures, something to imitate the food that fish are going to eat. And then you're probably, if you're not going to use artificial lures, you're going to need some bait. The easiest thing to do is to go around your backyard to look for an area where leaves are decaying and you have some dark soil and find yourself some worms. Okay? So we're going to talk a little bit to start with about rods and reels. Okay? You're going to want to ask your parents or look around your house, or maybe you already know what you have. You're probably either going to have a spinning rod like this one right here, a spinning reel. Okay? This is a 6-foot medium heavy rod, and I've got a 4000 series Penn Battle 2 on this. Okay, I'm also using braided line. This is 20-pound braided line. This is the kind of stuff that it's very versatile. You can catch some big things on the Chesapeake Bay on this. You may have a small version of this rod right here. This is a bait caster. It's a totally different setup. You hold it upside down, you fish it like this instead of like this. And instead of it being left-handed, it'll be right-handed. You might have a small bait casting rod. Some of those are push-button rods. I could show you that in another video, but a little Zebco special would be a great little push-button rod for you. Basically, the line gets wound back and forth. We could also talk about fly fishing. I don't have my fly rod on me right now. Okay, but basically you want to get whatever you have, your rod and your reel, in working condition. It's going to have either braid or fluorocarbon or monofilament. Okay, this is monofilament line. This is braid line. It's very thin. One of the biggest differences is how you tie knots between monofilament and braid. Also, monofilament tends to stretch a lot. So when you set the hook, you got to set it pretty hard. Whereas braid, it doesn't stretch as much, so you can feel the fish a lot better. You know what's going on the other side, and you can also put a lot more braid on a reel than you can monofilament. So look around your house, find yourself a rod and a reel, and we'll get started. We're going to look into different places we can find fish, different lures and different rigs. We're going to talk about patterns of fish and different things that you can do to catch them. Okay. One thing I'm doing right now, I've got a little bottom rig out. This is something you can do from on shore. You can do it from a boat, obviously. But all the way out in the bay there, I just put out fish bites. They imitate bloodworms. We've been catching a lot of perch, a lot of catfish, a lot of spot on bloodworms in the bay right now. It's a very simple rig. Okay. What I have here is braid. This is a 15-pound Power Pro braid. It's yellow Invisalign. Then there's a Uni Knot right here. That Uni Knot goes to 20-pound fluorocarbon, and then I've tied on a bottom rig. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do this in another video when we talk about rigging. But these are number 6 hooks, and on them these big pink things are fish bites. Basically looks like a piece of dentine gum that's scented and allows you to catch bait without having to dig up worms. We use them a lot here out on the bay, especially when it starts to warm up this summer. You could just use fish bites. They're a lot cheaper and just as good as bloodworms. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about casting. You probably have casted before. You want to use your finger to hold the line, flick your bail over, point your rod in the direction of where you're casting and send it out there. Flick your bail over, and okay, if you're waiting to feel for a fish, you put your finger right here on the line. Keep it a little bit tight. Might have to reel it in, put the rod tip down so you can feel what's going on. And I have a weight on the bottom of a bottom rig, so you can pull it across the bottom and feel where it is catching. And there's fish swimming around down there trying to eat little bits of food. Okay, so this is more like a scavenger kind of an animal. We're not using live bait right now that's swimming around. We're just using smelly stuff that's on the bottom, where bottom fish like perch and spot catfish will come and eat what you have down there. That kind of thing happens in freshwater, brackish, and saltwater fisheries, called bottom fishing. One of your most consistent fishing tactics this time of year, and it also will get you a variety of different fish. So get your gear together and get ready for tomorrow's video, where we're going to talk a little bit more about how to get started in fishing this summer. Alright guys, let's talk about knots, okay? No matter what you do, you're going to have to figure out how to take your rod and reel, whether you have braid or monofilament, and you're going to have to figure out how to tie it to terminal tackle. The first thing that I think you really should figure out how to get is a swivel. Now this is a really big swivel. If you're bluegill fishing or trout fishing or largemouth bass fishing, you don't need a swivel this big, but you need to know how to tie it. Okay? So I'm going to tie a different knot based on what kind of fishing line I'm using. So if you have braid, you need to know how to tie a polymer. If you have monofilament, like this guy, you're going to need really the best knot for you to learn how to use right away is a super clench knot. Okay, so let's start with a polymer knot, and in fact you can use a polymer knot on monofilament as well. It's a very versatile, one of the strongest knots you can do. You're going to start by making a bend in your line. You're going to double it over so that your line is 2 lines thick. And you're going to take your swivel. Okay? There's an end that's like a clip. That's going to go to your bait. And then there's an end that's like a circle. You're going to take the braid and you're going to put that doubled loop through the end of your clip. And then, really simply, you're just going to tie your shoes. You cross the doubled line, you know, you put it through the hole just like the first knot that you tie your shoes on, and you're going to tie it down. Okay? And what you've got is just 2 ends with a single overhand knot in the center. Now, this is where the polymer knot gets really fun. You're going to open up the loop. So one side will be open. Can you see this on the camera? Mm-hmm. And one side will be the closed loop. Okay? You're going to open up your closed loop. It's a very simple but essential step. Okay? You're going to put your swivel through the loop, or your bait, your lure, whatever you're trying to tie, and you're going to pull it all the way through. Okay? And then all you have to do is cinch the line down on itself, and you have made a polymer. Now the last and important step, if you actually want something to bite your lure, is to take some scissors. Could be a small pair, could be a big pair. Okay, these ones are made by Cuda. You probably don't need them unless you're going to be doing it a lot. Okay, but you're going to cut off the tag end so that fish don't swim by and say, "Oh, he has a fishing line and he's trying to catch me." Okay, and now you've got a polymer knot tied onto a swivel. All right, let's talk a little more about fishing line. Now, we just learned how to make a polymer knot in braid. Braid is pretty invisible. It's really thin, and I think we discussed before, it doesn't flex. So you can really feel the fish bite very sensitively. And it's about a quarter or a third of the diameter of a fishing line of the same strength. This is 15-pound braid. This is 15-pound fluorocarbon. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but it's way, way thinner. But you'll also notice that monofilament or fluorocarbon is clear. So particularly on a clear day like today, where you can see pretty far down into the bay, I'm not sure if you'll see that on the camera.
Yeah, on the filing.
Depending on how much wind and thunderstorms and wind there is in the bay, a lot of times you'll get really dirty water. There's really clear water today, okay? So if you're using braid, you're gonna wanna add some leader, okay? It's especially important in other places like Florida where the water is clear all the time, but it's also really important in streams and ponds and lakes. If you see clear water, you really need to tie some fluorocarbon onto your braid, okay? Now this is a really advanced knot that's not that hard to do if you follow the instructions, okay? I'm gonna tie a uni to uni knot. I start by unraveling some 20-pound fluorocarbon, okay? I'll put it down on the ground just so that I can have it coming up from the floor. And I want my braid coming down from up high, okay? And all I'm gonna do is take the fluorocarbon and I'm gonna make a loop. So now in the middle I have braid and fluorocarbon together in a line, and then I have my fluorocarbon loop. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through the center of this hole and I'm gonna weave a few times. I'm gonna go 1 wrap, 2 wraps, okay, 3 wraps. I'm trying to get some different ways for you to see this. I'm just wrapping the fluorocarbon around the braid. 4, 5, I usually do 6, sometimes I'll do 7. The more of these wraps you get, the thicker it gets, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna wet it. I'm gonna pull it up the braid. Okay, I'm not gonna tighten it too much, but I'm gonna pull it up to there. So it's wrapped around the braid. This is connecting 2 lines without terminal tackle. That's what a uni to uni is for. Now I'm gonna do the same thing with my braid, except instead of pulling down the fluorocarbon, I'm gonna wrap up the braid into a loop. Okay, and now again, instead of on the right side, on the left side, I have fluorocarbon and braid. I'm making a loop with my braid, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna weave it around the double line, 1. I'm gonna do a lot more on the thinner line. That's 3, 4, I usually do at least 8. 5. Now you can practice this at home with bigger rope. You know, it's a little easier to try if you use bigger rope. Just try to tie 2 ropes together instead of using a square knot like you would in sailing or in other applications. You're going to use a uni to uni. So this is like about 9 or 10 wraps. Same thing, it's important to wet it so that it can move. And I'm just going to pull down on the braid. Come on. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing down here. So now I have the braid wrapped to the fluorocarbon here. I've got the fluorocarbon wrapped to the braid there. And if I just pull on my braid and my fluorocarbon together, they're going to come closer and closer and closer until they touch. And once they touch, I'm going to tighten this fluorocarbon up a little bit more until it becomes a barrel. I'm going to slide them together. You like my sound effects? Just like that. Okay? Now, what do I want to do so the fish don't know what's going on? I'm just going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut the tag ends. Cut off my fluorocarbon. Cut off my braid. Okay, sometimes braid is hard to cut if you don't have a special scissors. And now what I have is braid that turned into fluorocarbon. So in dirty water, now my leader is clear. I can store a lot more line on my reel. I've got, how much do I want? Do I want 1 foot of fluorocarbon? Do I want 2 feet? Do I want 3 feet? I'm going to start with 3 feet. Okay, I'm going to start with 3 feet. I'll just clip myself off some fluorocarbon. And that is how you tie a uni to uni knot to make your braid turn into clear fluorocarbon. Okay, now we have braid, uni to uni, fluorocarbon. All right, but you'll notice that I'm not catching any fish because there's nothing on the end. In order to catch some fish, we're going to have to figure out what are the fish eating, and then we're going to have to imitate that pattern. Okay, now I guarantee that the fish aren't eating anything that's colored chartreuse. But in murky water, chartreuse at least gives it enough flash that they can see what's going on. Okay? This is a color that's used often in fishing. Okay, we use it also in large baits when we're catching rockfish, like in these trolling tandems. And if you notice, there's no circle at the end of this wire, it's just a loop. Just is sort of bent. So we're going to have to do something to tie on. Now you could tie a polymer. You learned how to tie a polymer. You could do that. I'm more comfortable tying so this is if you don't have braid or if you have fluorocarbon on. This is called a super clench. Okay, if you don't have a loop to tie to, you just have a bend. Or if you have a circle, you can use this also. It's really one of the only knots you need to know. If you know a polymer and a super clench, you're in pretty good shape. Okay. Now I have all of this line. I'm not sure I want this much fluorocarbon. If I wanted to live line for a spot, put a spot on the end of this, if I just wanted to tie a hook, I might want to have 3 feet of line so that that fish swims around naturally and looks natural. If I'm just going to tie a bait on like this and I want to be able to cast it a lot, I'm probably going to shorten this line. All right, so I'm going to shorten it maybe to 1.5 feet or 1 foot, depending on your preference. Okay. And let me show you a pretty simple knot called a super clench. Okay, you're just going to start by, that didn't work. You're going to start by putting the line into that bend. Okay. Then you're going to grab both lines and you're going to pull down and twist your bait about 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So now you have a twisted up line. What you're essentially doing is a triple overhand knot or a quintuplet overhand knot. You're going to take the tag end and you're not going to put it back under the bait, but you're going to put it through the loop that you made. You have all these wraps and it ends up in a loop, and you need to put that line in through that loop down there. And then you've created a big loop here. And you need to turn the tag end and pull it through the big loop that you created. Okay. And now you're going to cinch the whole thing down. Okay. You've basically done what you did for the uni to uni knot, except just with one line. And you're going to keep cinching it down until it barrels, ties nice and tight. Okay, are we finished? No, what do we need to do? Well, we don't want the fish coming by and seeing that we are using fishing line, because then they will know that they're going to be caught. So we got to clip that tag end off. Now we have this spinnerbait. Okay, spinnerbaits can be used in brackish water, salt water. They're very good in fresh water. I've caught bluegills, perch, rockfish, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, catfish, all on a spinnerbait like this. This one is a little more hardy than your freshwater version. It's called a perch pounder. It's very good here in the bay. And it's just going to run through the water like this. Can you see down in the water? The chartreuse. It's got a skirt. It looks like a fish because when it drops, the skirt flies up. And then it's got this spinner that flashes in the water. Okay. So now we have a rod, reel, we've We've got braid. We've got a Uni Knot. It goes to fluorocarbon, to a spinnerbait. And now we can start to think about where are the fish and which fish are going to eat this and what do I want the fish to see in the water so that it looks like what they naturally eat. Okay guys, so probably by now you found yourself a rod and a reel. You decided if you wanted braid or monofilament. If you wanted braid and you had clear water, you use a Uni Knot to tie on some fluorocarbon. You used a super clench to tie on a bait. In this case, we have a spinnerbait. And now you need to understand how to use your rod and your reel to put that bait where the fish are. So we're going to use a spinning rod here first. So we need to talk about the bail. Okay, this is the bail. If you click the bail over, all the line runs out. Don't do that accidentally or you'll step on it and get a hole in your foot, and that will not be good. Okay, so before you click the bail over, you have to take your finger and you've got to hold on to the line that you're going to cast. Okay, this is a pretty good hold. I hold almost all my rods between my middle finger and my index finger. They go right here. In fact, you can see how the rod has been shaped in the reel so that you can hold it that way. And that way your index finger is free, okay? For those of you who learned trombone from me, that's exactly how we hold a trombone. Okay? But you're gonna use that index finger to grab a little bit of line, and then when you click your bail over, it didn't go anywhere, did it? And now you can control when you want your line to come out of your reel. All you have to do is let go of the line. Okay? Now here's the trick to casting. You decide where you think the fish is, where you want to put the bait in the water. I like to rotate my reel so that the line is right across from the rod. I don't like to come over here and grab it from the front and have it all be cattywampus. I like to have it right where it goes, okay? Right here. I'm going to grab the line, click over the bail, and now, back up a little bit. Now, when I cast, I'm basically going to come back here to 9 o'clock, and I'm going to throw the rod forward to about 3 o'clock. Okay, that's not how you do fly fishing, but that's pretty much how you do spin fishing. Maybe more like 10 o'clock, 10 to 2. Maybe 9 is too far, 10 to 2. Okay. But you're going to throw the rod forward and you're going to let go at the same time. Okay. So you really have to time letting go of the line so that it goes out where you want it to go, and you follow through with your rod tip to where you think you're going to go. Okay. Then that's how you cast. It's really that simple. Of course, when you're in a boat, you have to make sure you don't hook other people. If your sister's next to you, you got to really be careful about your back cast, that you don't hook anything, that you don't snag yourself in the trees if you're in a river. Okay? But you basically want to work on timing so you can get that thing right where it wants to go. Okay? And that's casting. Now let's talk about retrieving. Okay? Some of your lures will float like a crankbait. Some of them will sink like a spinnerbait. So as soon as this rod hits the water, that bait is going to start to sink. If I leave the bail open, it's going to go down, 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 down. And I happen to know that perch are bottom fish, so I'm going to let this thing go all the way to the bottom. And now it stopped running out, so I know I am sitting on the bottom right there. And now I can start to reel in. So I'm right on the bottom next to this piling where these perch have been sitting. Okay? Now I'm going to do a slow retrieve. Slow retrieve is going to keep a bait that doesn't float toward the bottom. And I'm going to keep lifting my rod tip, which brings the bait up and then it falls back down. Bring the bait up and fall back down. And if you have fish that are on the bottom, this is a really good way to catch fish. Okay, that's one retrieve. Maybe you have aggressive fish in shallow water. And you cast the thing out there and you want it to be coming across the top like it's a frog. You want to reel quickly. You see it coming. Maybe you even want it to break the surface. A lot of times rockfish love to see their bait breaking the surface. Okay. But I will always vary the speed that I retrieve a bait. And if you need it to go down, you just got to open the bail and let it go down. Okay. So we talked a little bit about casting. We talked a little bit about retrieving, and that's really the essence of it. You want to think, where are the fish? What are they doing? And how am I going to get my rod and reel to cast my lure to where that is?